In 1975, the small company MITS, based in Albuquerque, introduced the Altair 8800, a machine that would change the history of personal computing. At first glance, it looked like a simple kit for hobbyists, a microcomputer built around the Intel 8080 processor, sold as a do-it-yourself assembly set. Its audience was technically curious people who loved to tinker, solder circuits, and experiment at home. But the Altair had a significant barrier: its interface. Users had to enter programs using switches, inputting sequences of binary numbers manually. One wrong flip of a switch, and the program would fail. It was a machine that spoke in its own primitive language, with no translator, no compiler, and no guidance for the user. In this challenging environment, two young software enthusiasts, Bill Gates and Paul Allen, saw an opportunity that others missed. Both had a deep fascination with computers and a clear understanding that software could be just as important as hardware. Bill Gates, who had started programming in his teens, and Paul Allen, equally passionate about electronics and computing, recognized that the Altair's hardware potential was enormous, but it lacked a layer of software that made programming accessible to everyday users. They envisioned a world where humans could communicate with computers in a readable and understandable way, without needing to learn the intricacies of machine code. Driven Basic programming language for personal computers. BASIC had been designed to be simple and educational, but Gates and Allen transformed it into a tool that could bring computing to hobbyists, students, and aspiring programmers. For the first time, someone could write commands that were human-readable, commands that the machine could execute directly, without requiring a deep understanding of the Intel 8080 processor. This was revolutionary. From a software engineering perspective, Altair BASIC was a monumental achievement. The Altair had only 4 kilobytes of RAM, which is 4,096 bytes, barely enough to store a few paragraphs of text. Gates and Allen had to optimize every single byte. Actually, they were creating a virtual machine on hardware that had not been designed for abstraction. This approach anticipated many principles that are now standard in modern interpreters and compilers. Another major innovation of Altair BASIC was the separation of hardware and software. Before this, software was often custom-built for each computer. Programs could not easily run on multiple machines without significant adjustments, consistency, and reducing errors specific to individual machines. This idea of reusable, modular software was groundbreaking, foreshadowing the practices of platform abstraction, interface-driven development, and modular design, that multiple technical components, all packed into just 4 to 8 kilobytes. It had a token analyzer that broke down commands, a parser that understood the structure of programs, an execution engine that ran commands in real time, and memory management routines that maximized efficiency. It translated high-level BASIC commands into Intel 8080 machine instructions on the fly. Input handling, error detection, and input-output routines were carefully designed for stability and predictability. Despite running on extremely limited hardware, the interpreter was reliable, responsive, and user-friendly. The story of Gates and Allen during this period is also remarkable. Bill Gates had just dropped out of Harvard, driven by a passion for software, while Paul Allen worked tirelessly to bring their ideas to life. They demonstrated the software on the Altair before any personal computer industry existed, and the reaction was immediate. The Altair BASIC became the first commercial product of Microsoft, proving that software could be a marketable, standalone product. It generated revenue, established credibility, and laid the foundation for the company that would go on to dominate the software world. Culturally, Altair BASIC democratized programming. Hobbyists now had the tools to write algorithms, share code, and create communities. Newsletters began circulating, early forums formed, and the first software ecosystems emerged. Many of the early users of Altair BASIC became engineers, entrepreneurs, and innovators who drove the personal computing revolution. Altair BASIC did not just teach programming, it inspired experimentation, collaboration, and creativity in a generation of early computer enthusiasts. The design of Altair BASIC also demonstrated usability under extreme constraints. The syntax was simple, errors were clear, and feedback was immediate. Users could experiment and learn safely, which encouraged curiosity and innovation. Gates and Allen were not merely writing code, they were designing an interface between humans and machines, shaping the way people would interact with computers for decades to come. The philosophy of Microsoft, which began with Altair BASIC, emphasized modular, portable, and user-centered software. These principles would later be reflected in MS-DOS, Windows, and Office. Each subsequent product carried lessons learned from this first interpreter, proving that good software design could have long-lasting impact. Altair BASIC was a strategic turning point. By abstracting the complexity of the hardware, Gates and Allen opened computing to millions of users. They proved that software could exist independently, creating a market where none had existed. The credibility they gained allowed Microsoft to form critical partnerships, expand its vision, and ultimately become a leader in software development. Technically, culturally, and strategically, Altair BASIC was more than just a basic interpreter. It demonstrated how software engineering could accelerate technological adoption. It provided efficiency, reliability, and accessibility, empowering a generation, shaping an industry, and laying the foundation for Microsoft's global success. Even though Altair BASIC ran on a modest kit in Albuquerque, its impact was monumental. It democratized programming, turned software into a product worth selling, and sparked the personal computing revolution. The vision, technical mastery, and strategic thinking behind this small interpreter were extraordinary. Altair BASIC became a milestone in computing history, a symbol of what is possible when innovation meets opportunity. Bill Gates and Paul Allen showed the world that software could not only follow hardware,